What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. You know the saying that if you are really desperate to do something, you would not care about the methods you use to achieve your goal. There is no more place for being shy, no time to be tired or unfocused. You forget about your patriotic feelings or love towards your president when your loved one is missing in this war in Ukraine. It is exactly at this moment when people realize that what is truly important. Not the restoration of historic Russian borders, not a sense of greater duty, not the desire to even sacrifice everything to achieve a common goal, no. This is when all that matters is finding this person you love the most. And you are ready to throw away all the prejudices and stereotypes if they stand in your way. This is exactly what has been happening with the Z-Patriots almost since the beginning of the invasion, and it really intensified recently. We made several videos in the past talking about the reasons why so many Russians do not protest the atrocities happening in Ukraine simply because it does not affect them directly. But everything changes when the war comes knocking on their doors and takes away their husbands, brothers and sons. And sure, the first instinct is to contact anyone they can find from the Ministry of Defense of Russia. After all, this is where they went into the military, right? Just to hear in 90% cases, this person is considered missing in action, we don't have any more information, and as soon as we know something, we will call you back. And as expected, they forget about this request the second they hang up the phone, because they have hundreds if not thousands people with similar problems waiting on the line. The Z-Patriots know it as well, that as soon as they hang up the phone, they will be all by themselves. So out of pure desperation, they turn to their number one enemies inside Russia. Or at least that's what the Russian propaganda tells them. The people of Russia who are against the war. Deep inside those Z-Patriots, they know that they have just a little bit more chances of finding their missing relatives if they try and contact these anti-war bloggers and YouTubers. Because these people usually care about the human lives no matter if they fight for or against Russia. They might give them a database, direct them to another websites, or even simply leaving a comment on a YouTube video with 700,000 views already gives them so much more hope than just simply trying to contact, once again, the Ministry of Defense of Russia. And that's exactly what they do, despite the alleged shame that Russian propaganda wants them to feel. So today, let's talk about the ever-growing number of missing Russian soldiers, the attempts of their friends and relatives to find them by any means possible, and how allegedly those internal enemies of Russia and foreign agents end up the ones actually caring about their missing loved ones. Since the beginning of the war, as soon as the topic of this channel switched from investing to invasion updates, and by the way, that's why I call you guys investors in the beginning of each video, my goal was simple: to give the people of the West war updates while simultaneously showing that not all Russians are the same and to protect whatever little reputation Russia as a country, not as a president, has left. The videos were also meant to Russians themselves, a very little portion of my viewers by the way. Pro-Russian supporters and even trolls, regarding of political affiliation, regional background or socioeconomic standing. It is my belief that if you truly mean good for the humanity in general, you should never turn your back on those who propaganda shows you as your enemy. You should always try and communicate with these people directly, if possible. During the times where every statement risks being twisted or censored, the moral responsibility to connect with even the most remote communities becomes extremely important. And so, as a result, my content is imbued with a language of resistance, an invitation to question, to disrupt the carefully rehearsed narratives, and to engage with the uncompromising truth. Initially, it was all about stirring the awareness. However, it soon evolved into an impassioned community nourished by collective defiance and shared hardships. This channel now thrives as more than just an archive of alternative views. It is a living forum where conversations are raw and unfiltered. Here, the ideas clash, truths are dissected, and the painful realities that many prefer to ignore are brought into harsh daylight. And I'm so glad that so many of you guys stayed with us through all these times. I'm also glad that we were able to fully divert our attention from frontline updates and censored videos to this type of content. Content that really matters. And slowly, a couple people at a time, we, together, as a community, are able to help new viewers to become just a little bit better human beings, not filled with rage, hatred, and baseless stereotypes. For that reason, if you are new here, please consider subscribing to my channel. We welcome everyone here, no matter who you support or where your allegiances lie. Welcome. Alright, now let's talk about something extremely relevant to today's episode. Recently, a comment appeared here on YouTube that was far more influential than any propagandistic headline or official narrative. A user under the name of Valery Shutov mentioned that his son, barely old enough to comprehend the magnitude of his sacrifice, embarked on his very first combat mission on January 20th of this year. Assigned to the 30th Brigade of Military Unit 45863, this young recruit was thrown into a system riddled with deception and institutional neglect, and he was definitely a sender not out of the patriotic feelings. Instead of soaring under lofty ideals, he was caught in a labyrinth where promised wages disappeared into endless bureaucratic voids, and every step was plagued by systemic deceit. From the very first days when Sergei just arrived to his military unit, they forced him to pay 59,000 rubles, almost $700, just because. Just because it is a tradition of this military unit and every new recruit has to do it. If he refuses, he will be sent straight into an assault. And even though, according to his father Valery Shutov, they did make the payment, it still was not enough to protect the son from another meaningless and final assault later. What makes this event even more disturbing is that it is not merely an isolated incident. It is emblematic of a broader crisis where personal futures are sacrificed just to make Putin happy. The anguished revelation of a missing son, combined with the bitter irony that financial entitlements are swallowed by rampant extortion and mismanagement, it all exposes a pattern of broken promises and stolen futures. Here, the sacrifice is repackaged as a necessary toll for an abstract ideal, while the glaring human cost is conveniently obscured by official statistics. The suffering of this father transcends personal grief. It encapsulates the betrayal felt by countless families whose children are ensnared by a systemic indifference to the true meaning of sacrifice. His experience not only underlines the sinister mechanics of such a regime, but also paints a wider picture of a society where the intimate pain of loss becomes a common currency of the exchange of state power for unquestioning obedience. Some people might think that this father's comment might have been a pro-Ukrainian bot, trying to discredit the Russian army. But no. The information about those people is easily found on Google in literally under 5 minutes. We did it personally. Here is the VK social media page, for example, of Sergei Shutov. Here is his picture with a friend and his father Valery. And here is the post about Sergei being missing made by his wife Irina. The post is made on the Committee of the Mothers of Russian Soldiers page, approved by the Russian censorship and the Ministry of Defense itself. So it almost certainly concludes that this person is real and he is missing. But unfortunately for his family, missing in this case means death in 99% of the cases. And don't forget that this comment was left on one of the anti-war videos. Something that is even considered illegal for the Russian people to watch, believe it or not. Which once again confirms the fact that once the situation is truly desperate, a person's true identity and loyalty reveals itself. It is no longer about patriotism, Putin, and saving Russians in Ukraine for these Z-Patriots. It is about their relatives, friends, loved ones, and life itself. As it has always been. It is just that these feelings were silenced and pushed down by relentless Russian propaganda. In today's hyper-connected era, the digital realm has emerged as an unexpected and potent forum for voices too long stifled by state control. It became a boundless archive where every post, every shared image, and every desperate plea confronts the sanitized accounts of power. Platforms like Vkontakte or VK we spoke about previously have evolved far beyond social networks. They are now verifiable battlefields of memory, where the unfiltered, anonymous testimonies of families converge into a torrent of raw data. Across the digital landscape, the relentless search for missing soldiers has acquired a ritualistic urgency. Posts emerge with sporadic details, a name revealed here, a call sign offered there, forming an intricate mosaic of unresolved stories that stand defiant against the institutional ignorance of Russian authorities, obviously particularly those in the Ministry of Defense of Russia. These entries capture not just numbers, but the intimate agony of lives disrupted by a war that consumes youth and erases their futures. The internet has become a haven where families left to fend for themselves piece together fragments of their loved ones' final moments. And while state institutions work hard to enforce a narrative of invincible valor, regimented honor, and personal sacrifice, the irrevocable truth emerges from countless online testimonies. A truth that unites dispersed voices in a singular call for accountability and remembrance. The never-ending accumulation of these digital records defies the state's attempts to bury inconvenient facts, ensuring that each lost name and every hushed whisper of pain remains etched into the collective consciousness. The internet now stands as the impartial custodian of our shared history, where every post is both a memorial and a protest against an indifferent regime that would prefer to let these tragedies fade away unnoticed. Broader reflections reveal an even grimmer landscape. A landscape where individual tragedies are not isolated incidents, but integral parts of a sprawling national crisis. Beneath every military unit lies a hidden narrative, a series of lives abruptly terminated, families decimated, and dreams obliterated by a state apparatus that regards human lives as expendable. We just talked about one single example, the Shutov family, but recent investigations uncover that nearly 150 individuals from a single combat unit have evaporated into oblivion over just a few short months. The official narrative, steeped in the rhetoric of valor and unwavering patriotism, constructs an image of endless sacrifice, where every casualty is sanitized and every disappearance framed as an inevitable cost of national honor. However, when one lifts the curtain, a completely different reality comes into view, one where each fallen soldier represents not only a personal tragedy, but also a glaring indictment of a government's inefficiency and moral decay. The relentless cycle of forced enlistments, unchecked disappearances, and systemic record erasures is not just a grim statistics. It is a mirror reflecting the disintegration of a societal contract built on trust and shared humanity. The absence of these erased voices from public records is an attempt to rewrite the past, to smooth over the sharp edges of a conflict that had fractured the soul of the nation. Underneath the polished facade of propaganda lies an unyielding truth. A country is in deep crisis, where each missing soldier and every unacknowledged tragedy contributes to the slow, inevitable collapse of collective moral integrity. Beyond the cold statistics, the human narrative reveals itself in fragments. A mother's endless vigil, a brother's futile search, the burden of unanswered questions that hover like specters over shattered homes and lives. This crisis is far more than a series of lost numbers. It is a social rupture that challenges the very essence of what it means to be a community, a society, and a nation. The silencing of these personal stories is the regime's final attempt to shield itself from accountability, even as the truth finds new life in the digital records tirelessly maintained by those who refuse to accept the official lies. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel. Everyone here is welcome. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.